Okay, great. So today's plan meeting, I'm going to share my screen with the plan agenda. So please don't put anything sensitive on the agenda or tell me if you're going to, so I can stop sharing at that point. Otherwise, I'll need to make the video unlisted. Sorry, not unlisted, private. The first thing is just minor. Donald, I'm out next week, so if you could record this and handle all that, that would be great. Yeah, thanks. Eric had a question next. I can't see if he is here because, yeah, Eric's not here. So let's rearrange this. Kushal, do you want to talk about your issue?
Yep, although, okay, I see Brett is on the call. I'm not sure if Annabelle has joined in. So this basically around how we want default sort order to be. So as we know that we have introduced pagination for epics tree, where by default GraphQL limits number of results for issues and epics which are attached as a child items to any given epic, and the limit is 100. So if there are more than 100 issues or 100 epics attached as children, then we would limit first load to include only first 100 items. And then if end cursor is provided for a particular list, then we would fetch in another 100 from that starting point, which is represented by end cursor. So the order currently is such that, like in current implementation of tree, the API returns both epics and issues in two different arrays from backend. So we are essentially concatenating those arrays into single chunk, and then we are rendering it on UI. So by default, issues show up at the top of the list, followed by epics. So in case there are more items than what first page can handle, we would be making another request, and it would again fetch in results in two different arrays for issues and epics, and we would again have to concatenate it. So the order doesn't really feel intuitive because we currently do not follow any kind of sort order. So there is a conversation in that issue going on regarding how we want to go about doing the ordering. Brett has responded there, and Brett, if you want to take it over, feel free
to. Okay. Good morning. Yeah, I think that there's a couple things. The default sort order in terms of receiving the epics and the issues is in ID order, and I need to go in and add in the sort arguments for epics and issues in the GraphQL. So then that'll, Kushal, that'll give you the opportunity to sort them basically however you want. And I think based upon what we've already got, I think we're going to want to do it in relative position order, which is when you drag sort the epics and the issues around, that will allow that to work. The other piece is, do we put the issues above, all the issues above the epics, or do you interleave them and stuff like that? I think we decided to keep them as separate lists. Is that right? Or to keep all the issues at the top and the epics at the bottom, or?
Yes. So initial idea was to have those in that way, but now that we have a limit of how many items are returned by GraphQL API on first request, so in case the page size is currently 100, and if items are more than 100, then the first batch would show 100 issues at the top, followed by 100 epics at the bottom of the list. And if we are showing a link as used in the UX of that issue, like we would show a show more descendants link at the bottom of the list. So if user clicks on that link, then we would fetch another page of the data where we would again show issues at top of the list and epics at bottom of the list. Now the question here is like whether we want to insert newly fetched issues within the existing list, or whether we want to append the results as it is. If we were to append the results, then we would have kind of a zigzag style rendering where we would have list bunch of issues followed by bunch of epics, then again bunch of issues, bunch of epics. So that is one problem. If there is any sort order which is in place, like based on which we want to sort the results, then where does the sorting happen? Whether we want that to happen on client side, that is within the browser, which I don't think is very performant, And if we were to do it on server side, then in that case, we cannot have two different arrays of items, because right now issues and epics are in two different arrays provided by API, which is basically part of the problem. Like if API would return a single array of which combines issues and epics in certain order, then frontend wouldn't have to worry about how to order those items. Because currently we are receiving the data in two different arrays.
Sounds like something that very easy to implement in GraphQL, right? Maybe we just need to move those endpoints to GraphQL finally.
They are in GraphQL, actually.
Oh, cool. So you could actually bring as an array, like into Leap, right?
Well, yeah, you're going to have different objects, but the problem is that the problem is there's no defined way to interleave issues and epics, because the relative position order are separate entities upon those. So there's a relative position sorting on epics, there's a relative position sorting on issues, and they don't match. So there's no, at least that I can determine, there's no good way to say, yeah, you can interleave these exactly.
Yeah, from the backend side, I think the only reasonable option is to have them as two separate lists, which I think makes sense. I don't think the intention for this is really that you should be like mixing and matching too much anyway. Like, you know, you might have an epic with a few epics and a few issues, but like it shouldn't have like 100 epics and 100 issues, right? Like it's, you know, from a user perspective. The other thing I wanted to say there was, I can look up like how many issues, like which epic has the most issues or which epic has the most child epics if you want, because I'm a little bit worried that we're spending a lot of time thinking about this and could probably pick an okay solution for now and then address it later if it becomes a bigger problem.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right about that, Sean. I think that, honestly, I think the simplest issue is to keep the issues at the top. So as long as the backend gives a well-defined sort order, which you need anyway in order for the GraphQL to give the next set of things, then, you know, if you click the Show More Issues button, then the new issues that come in appear right underneath that. Same way with the epic section. You're going to click that as in the list, and the next batch come in right after that. The other situation that we were talking about in the issue is what happens when you add a new issue. Where does that fit into the whole thing? If you create an issue, does it come up at the top? If you add an existing issue that fits in with a different sort order, does that get added at the top, or does that get interleaved in? And I think that was one of the other questions we had.
So, like Brett mentioned, currently the MR that I have opened for that issue follows the simplest approach, like we are appending the results. If you want, I can show a quick demo. I have it running where you can basically limit the page size, and then if the first fetch of the list is beyond certain page size, then we would show that link as shown in those screenshots. And once user clicks on those links, whatever results that are provided by API, we would simply append it into the list. Just that we would have, as I explained earlier, like we would have a bunch of issues followed by epics, followed by issues, basically alternating within the list itself. So if we are okay with it, then it's a simple approach. And in that case, if any newly added items are tried upon, like for example, if user tries to add a new epic or an issue to the existing list, we would simply show it on the top. But then when page gets reloaded, we would have a different order. So that becomes tricky because we also want drag and drop to be in place. So for example, user had like 100 plus items, as I said, and then user tries to reorder them in a certain order. And then when the page gets reloaded, we would by default show a certain number of items. Then when user clicks on show more, we need to make sure that whatever order that user set it before reloading the page is preserved across the reloads and the show more descendants behavior. So that is probably making it tricky.
So we'll have to. I saw your branch, Kushal, about the demo stuff, and I haven't had a chance to load that up today. So I'll do that and take a look at that. I think appending to the end of the list is perfect for the more situation, and we'll have to see how adding new items fits in. We may have to insert it into the proper relative position within the issue list. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is on that yet.
Or Brett, probably we can schedule a call with Hannibal. Like 3 of us can have a call later this week or probably next week, and then decide on how to, like, what are the cases that we want to handle. And then once we are on the same page, we can go about it and finalize the UX for the pagination, and then approach it accordingly.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Thanks.
Okay,
Eric, you're next.
Cool. Thank you all. Sorry I was a bit late. I threw this issue on to the agenda because this one came up in the product team meeting yesterday, where PMs are essentially would find this filtering very, very useful in terms of not filtering out all the things that aren't bugs, or doing more advanced filter options as they're grooming their backlogs. And so it was one of those cases where we obviously want to dog food here. We had this scheduled already for 12.2. But one of the things Joshua brought up to me was the fact that this was originally started in CE, which I didn't know. The current issues are in EE. And so this seemed like it warranted a conversation, because I read through the entire thread that's linked there. And it was just an interesting thread to read through. There's like 200 and some odd upvotes for putting this into CE. And I wanted to kind of get the team's thoughts on historical context and whether or not this should actually be a paid feature. I think there's an argument to be made either way, but I'm kind of leaning towards putting this into core. So I wanted to get the team's thoughts and have a quick discussion around it.
So the original reason for having this in EE is because you needed Elasticsearch to enable this, because we never actually did the work to get database filtering working this way.
Is that still true?
I'm not sure that's right, because this is for the filtering, which never used Elasticsearch in the first place, and I don't think we plan to do that in general.
Sorry, the global search does have not and has phrases, things like that. But you're right. Sorry, this is about the actual MR and issue filtering, like the bar that has the labels and things like that. Yeah, that has never used. Sorry.
I think
never implemented it either. So it's
yeah, we haven't, like, from a technical perspective, I think it's generally easier to put stuff in core, especially if it touches a lot of places, is all I'll say there. That's not the way we should make product decisions necessarily, but that's generally how it works from that side. I see Alexis had some comments as well.
Yeah, I mean, my question would be same as Eric's, like, why would it be in EE? I don't really understand the context there either. In my opinion, yeah, it seems to add so much value to so many users that I don't know why we wouldn't have it in core. And I was doing I just started a competitive analysis, and it seems like a pretty basic feature in many products, like a very core feature to allow people to just zoom in and out of their data. So, I mean, I think we should include it. Again, I don't know historically, like, why it's not there, and I don't really know our sales strategy, so that would be interesting to me.
right. We make a promise that we try to decide who the likely type buyer is to decide whether it's in CE or EE. So basically, we need to consider who is the person that will use this feature. Like, would an individual contributor be using these filters in this search? And if the answer is yes, then this should probably go to core.
I think the answer probably is yes.
Yeah, same here.
One of the reasons I brought it up is because that issue is a little bit meandering in terms of our decision process for why it got moved to EE in the first place. So I was just wondering if I missed something when that happened.
I don't remember. If anybody was going to, I guess it would be me, and I don't. So
okay, yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, and it's not meant to throw anyone under the bus. It's really just to gather as much context as I can here. But with 287 upvotes, this is one of the highest upvoted features that we have in core.
Yeah, and I think you can assume that from those 287 upvotes, they're not all like managers or directors or whatever as well, right? Like going back to the persona thing. The other thing about this is I think we discussed in one of the issues or somewhere that we wanted to do not and then do or. We don't want to do them both in the same release, ideally. And also, I don't think the UX is really happened here. Like we've talked about it a bit, but we haven't like really sat down and done it. And that's quite a big part of this. We can like work on the back end and to a certain extent the front end without that. But I think it's a very important part of this as well. So if we definitely know that we're going to work on this in 12.2, then it's good to call that out early, I think.
Okay.
By the way, I just noticed that the Epic actually has more information as to why it's an EE. So what Victor had said was that this would be most likely used by somebody higher up to track the team itself, like filtering out other teams and things like that. But, again, like you said, we can basically talk about this either way.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That's helpful. That's all I needed on that agenda item. So
cool.
Unless anyone else has another comment, we can move to you, Sean.
Okay, I'll go ahead. So, yep, we've got a new engineering manager starting on the 22nd of July, which I'm very excited about. So I've been announcing in a bunch of places. We'll start the work of splitting the teams once they start. I just linked to a Slack thing in the thanks channel that Eric Johnson put in because of how positive the feedback was for this person overall. So I'm definitely really excited that they're joining. And then I had the next thing as well, which was just asking Eric if there was an update on renaming the two groups that go into the plan stage, because we were going to change team planning and enterprise planning to something else.
Yeah, so one of the things we ran into, we were going to change team planning to project management and enterprise planning to portfolio management. But in the way that our pages are rendered and the way that the categories, the groups, and the stages are structured, you can't actually have the same name as a group and a category name. So that means that we would have to either change the category that is called project management to allow for a group to be called project management. But if we do that, the group is the one piece in that hierarchy that's actually not customer facing. So the stage is customer facing and the category is customer facing, but the group is not. It's just a way that we're internally organizing. And so if you move project management to the group level, we actually get no goodness from any sort of marketing terms, SEO optimization, that kind of stuff. And so we don't really want to take project management away from our category. And so the latest proposal is just to leave as is for team planning. So leave team planning as it is, and then rename enterprise planning to portfolio management, because we don't have a category called portfolio management. So that's the latest on that.
And should we consider that maybe we might want a category like that, or were we sure that that's not going to happen?
Well, we already do. It's called Agile Portfolio Management.
Okay, we're good then.
Yeah, so that was, once again, another optimization to get as much marketing goodness as possible.
Okay.
So in that case, we're not kind of limited. So yeah, we don't have to consider it there. But anyway, that's the latest, Sean.
Cool, thank you. One nice thing about that I don't think really should be taken into consideration is that the two groups would no longer have the same initials, which would probably be confusing some of the time if we had a PM and a PM one. So yeah, obviously we're not going to use the initials for these very often because PM is quite an overloaded set of initials, but you know, in general, it's nice if we have less overlap. So yeah, Eric, you've got the next and last thing about the release post.
Yeah, so there are two things that I came across in the release post as I was doing this last week, and I wanted to see where we are. So the first one is for the issue statistics. This is actually something one of our tech writers caught. Do we need to add state to the API table here?
Alexandru, you'd know, I guess.
Let me check. No.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a no. Because yeah, because statistics actually considers returning numbers on all of the states, so that's why you don't need the actual state. It'll return for closed, open, and all data. So yeah.
Great, thank you. The second one is for the Epic quick actions, which I had pinged. I forget who I pinged someone last week on this, but these quick actions were not added to the documentation. Do we know where that's at?
I'll do that. I did open the issue. I just didn't get to it, and was actually not like prioritized or anything. But I can take it in this release. I think it should take very little to do it. So yeah.
Yeah, please. Sorry, Eric, were you going to say something?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Alexandru, sorry if this wasn't clear before. So like, you know, in general, like the documentation goes with the feature thing as a GitLab wide thing. So it's not specific to plan. So what I'm talking about here is sort of general, but the documentation is probably higher priority than pretty much anything else you'll be working on if something's already shipped without documentation, because in the release post, we want to link to the documentation, and also, you know, it's not really done unless it has documentation, I guess is the point. It's part of our definition of done. So in general, that's how the priorities work. Like ideally documentation be in the original MR. If it's not, it's a high priority to add it.
Yeah, it was my oversight. So yeah.
Well, not just yours, because obviously people reviewed this MR, people merged this MR. It might have even been me. I don't remember. But just when we do miss it, it's a high priority to add it, is all I'm saying.
Cool.
Okay, great. Well, thanks very much, everybody. I won't speak to you all next week, but have a good week without me anyway. And yeah, have a good rest of this week as well.
Have a good rest of the week, everybody.
This was my
Bye,
first
everyone.
actual call I was able to make, and it was awesome. 5 stars.
Awesome.
Review.
And you're in the same place as Patrick, right?
Yes, I am. Bye,
Hey,
see you
Peter.
later.
Bye.
Hey, everyone.